We've got the generators in places, both north and south. We've got generators on Charleston, the Rubies, here at Get Ready. We had the program stood up and has been there for 10 years. Get Ready, we had the program stood up and has been there for 10 years. If we get it front through, we need to seat it. Any technical questions, because I just know what they look like. The generators, that is. Thank you. If we get it front through, we need to seat it. If we get it front through, we need to seat it.
Okay, folks, so I want to go into a little bit more from this report to the President and the Congress from 1979, National Weather Modification Policies and Programs from the U.S. Department of Commerce. And I left off on hail suppression. And before I go into some of that, I do have some additional information on hail suppression too, but I also want to remind y'all that there is the gag order on the Weather Service employees. Then these Weather Service employees that do want to come forward need to understand that they have the public's backing. The public has their back. And they need the whistleblower protection, and we need more attention drawn to this. So whenever anybody tries to tell you that, you know, there's no way they could possibly get away with some of these things that you claim that they're doing, remind them that there is a gag order on Weather Service employees for a reason. And there shouldn't be. There really should not be. That's absolutely ridiculous to me, because these agencies that are in charge of all of this stuff, like NOAA and all that, are supposed to be there doing their jobs for the public's best interest. And it's not in the public's best interest to be denied information that would allow the public to make informed decisions, okay? That is never in the public's best interest, to deny information that would allow all individuals and all human beings to make informed decisions. So this needs to be people need to be reminded of this. So, anyway, I do have some additional information on hail suppression from 1977 as well. That's kind of curious, some of the information they share in that. But anyway, this hail suppression thing here, considering the fact that there's been some issues with some very large hail and hail damage and stuff going on right now, at what point, we already have established and they've already admitted that they've been altering and manipulating our weather and our atmosphere for decades, okay? They've already admitted that they have the ability to influence some of these larger storm cells out there on the oceans and out there on the high seas, so to speak. So, at what point, when there's a hurricane or something that hits one of the coasts and it does extensive damage, at what point can we shake our fingers at them and say, why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you stop that hurricane from coming into shore? We've given you trillions of dollars for the last 8 decades to research, develop, and you've been researching and developing and deploying these systems for decades, and you allow a hurricane to come into our shores, you're gone. You're fired. That's neglect. At what point do we reach in this whole bigger picture of geoengineering and weather manipulation, do we say, why didn't you stop that tornado that just went through and destroyed this entire town and killed 11 people, so to speak, just for an example? Why did you allow that? At what point do we hold them accountable for the damages that are done, whether it's because they caused it directly themselves by influencing it, or whether they stood back and just allowed it to happen when they had the ability to directly influence it and stop it? At what point do we hold them fully accountable, folks? More people need to be aware of some of this stuff, and my point of reiterating some of these older files from the 70s is to compound and reiterate, because I'm repetitive. This has been going on for a very long time. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not science fiction. They've been researching, developing, and deploying these weather modification systems for decades. So at some point, they need to be held accountable. Whether they directly influence it and it does damage, or whether they have the ability to stop it from doing damage and they hold back and they don't do it, there needs to be accountability. And this hail suppression information here is pretty interesting, and the history of it is kind of interesting too. I have a file here. This is just part of it, and I want to go into just one of the beginning chapters as well of this file here, because it's like 300 and some pages. This was from 1977, Illinois State Water Survey, Urbana, Illinois, April 1977, hail suppression impacts and issues, and it's got some interesting information in it that I want to share as well. So, anyway, I'm going to go into this, and then I have something, too, that's kind of curious. It might give you a little bit of laugh. Hopefully I have time to share that, too. This summary of major findings. This is concerning hail suppression from the report to the President and the Congress in 1979. Hail suppression. Hail, another form of precipitation from cumulus clouds, is a major cause of agricultural crop losses and property damage in the United States, especially in the Great Plains region. Most of the damage is caused by the larger hailstones. Consequently, suppressing the growth of large hailstones has been a long-time goal of weather modification activities. Efforts to suppress hail began in the United States in the 1950s. Privately supported projects over small areas first took place in high crop loss areas in Nebraska and West Virginia, well before experimentation had established a scientific approach to hail suppression. So again, doing things without full public consent, just taking the liberty, right? Hail research efforts appeared in Canada in the 1950s, culminating in a major... Is that something? What is that? Oh, I don't know what that is up here. Anyway, sorry, I got distracted. Culminating in a major hail suppression project in 1974. The project, a cooperative effort between segments of the Canadian government and McGill University, was conducted in the province of Alberta and began as a mixture of operations and experimentation using cloud-based and cloud-top seeding techniques. In 1976, the project became fully operational as a result of pressure from farming interests. The randomized experiment, lasting only 2 years, was too short to provide firm scientific conclusions about seeding to suppress hail. So in other words, we didn't get the results that we wanted. The results weren't positive, but we're not going to show you any of the results at all because they were most likely all negative. Anyway, let's see. The first major U.S. hail suppression research experiment occurred in northeastern Colorado in 1959. But results were inconclusive. Of course they were. Operational programs of hail suppression, without any proof of great success or any foundation of sound scientific experimentation, continued into the 1960s and 1970s in Colorado, Kansas, Texas, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Between 1958 and 1977, 71 hail suppression field operations and experiments were conducted, mostly in the Great Plains. Hail suppression has been practiced on all continents except Antarctica. United States companies have played an important role through exportation of hail suppression techniques in its spread to Kenya, Italy, South Africa, and other nations. Most of these projects have been ended by a lack of continued financial support because the evidence of hail suppression was not strong enough. Yeah, that's why. That's why. It wasn't because it was doing extensive damage, right? No. That's inconclusive. Yeah. The Soviet Union has developed an ambitious hail suppression effort and claims a 60 to 80% effectiveness in reducing hail. Similar programs have been fostered in several Eastern European countries, and Soviet hail seeding equipment and supplies are marketed for sale around the world. Well, isn't that special? Soviet hail seeding equipment and supplies are marketed for sale around the world. Did you know that? This was back in 1979, folks. Let me remind you. A 7-year experiment in Switzerland between 1957 and 1963 suggested a 66% greater frequency of hail days in the seeded sample than in the unseeded sample. Rather than the intended decrease. Really? This difference was found to be statistically significant. France, Italy, and Switzerland are currently conducting a joint hail suppression experiment in Switzerland that is a carefully designed effort to test the effectiveness of the Soviet system and hypotheses. So, oh my goodness, yeah. That was back in 1979 again. Guys, I'm repetitive, I gotta say it again. In 1971, the federal government established a national hail research experiment in northeastern Colorado. This experiment, a major effort in applied research on hail suppression, included a randomized seeding test stimulated by the Russian experience. An analysis of the data collected after 3 years of experimentation revealed that there was, guess what, no statistically significant difference between the seeded and non-seeded incidents of hail. The planned 5-year statistical experiment was terminated after 3 years because the analysis indicated that statistically significant results could not be expected after 5 years, and the emphasis subsequently shifted to more fundamental studies of convective storms. So that's kind of interesting, huh? They terminated after 3 years because it indicated that there was no statistically significant results. So it is definitely one of them long-term things, right? So I'm wondering how many of these long-term projects have already been concluded, but they're hiding the data and the results. Gee, I'm sure that it's probably in the thousands. Okay, so this part here goes into hurricane moderation. So I'll pick that up in another video on this report to Congress, because I want to go into a little bit from this this file here on hail suppression impacts and issues. It's kind of curious. And I do have, this was, yeah, okay. So this was from volume 58, number 1, from January of 1977, from the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society, the BAMS. It was a magazine, and this is on the status of hail suppression. I want to go into a little bit of this as well. But in this here, this is a paper and a final report that was put out, Technology Assessment of the Suppression of Hail and Suppression Impacts and Issues. And again, I'll show you there. It's from the Illinois State Water Survey, Urbana, Illinois, from April of 1977. And it's a pretty interesting report. And I'm going to start reading into a little bit of this, and then I'll try to do a separate series that will be just specifically from this report, because there's a bunch of information in here, and it's a pretty thick file. There's still other chapters. This is just like the first 5 chapters here, and it talks about some of the public's opposition as well and how they handled it. So it's kind of a curious read. So I'll probably do another video series on this particular file here on hail suppression impacts and issues from 1977. So, and I'll start with this here from the first chapter, I believe it is. Actually, no, this is the start of chapter 2 on this one. The first chapter just kind of goes into more of a background, but there's further chapters as well that discuss that I'll go into a little bit more about. This is just kind of interesting information, just to kind of compound the fact that they've been doing this for a very long time, folks. And there's been many reports like this written up that have been put in the hands of our so-called regulators and policymakers that has had a direct influence on our ability to get reasonable access to valuable resources, including our food supplies, including our water, which is absolutely vital. They have disrupted all of these things with these techniques that they've been deploying, researching, developing, and deploying for decades. And more people need to speak up about this kind of stuff here, seriously. It's had a negative impact for too long, and it needs to stop. Anyway, yeah, I will definitely go into more of this in another part, because this video here is probably already long enough, and I wanted to do something really quick. I wanted to show y'all something here too. This is kind of funny, actually. This is a patent here for a device for seeding a cloud cell. Okay. And what I wanted to show you guys here, I'm going to back this out just a little bit so you can see more of the page, so you can see the graphics and the figures that they put in this patent. This was from June 11th of 2020, just a few years ago, a device for seeding a cloud cell. And clearly you can see it's a depiction of a balloon, but this is just an example of how science, and more specifically scientists and the people that are in charge of some of these things just overcomplicate something as simple as popping a balloon, okay? Anyway, I will probably edit that out. Anyway, clearly though, you can see this is a depiction of what appears to be a balloon, right? And there's stuff inside of it, and the balloon is popping. And the stuff inside of it, which they call the AS, which is the active substance, is the AS. And it's spreading out, and it's getting into the storm cloud, right? And they have another figure 3A here that shows a balloon on the cabling system on a device here that has the AS in it, the active substances. And then they have this little device here that causes this to separate and all of that, right? And then clearly we see this is a depiction of a balloon with the active substance inside of it, right? Okay, and then you see it popping. Well, it's pretty simple. Like, you take a balloon, you fill it up with air, you put these additives and materials inside of it so that when it gets up in the atmosphere to a certain spot, it pops, and that material goes into the atmosphere, right? Yeah, well, here's how they describe these figures here. Oh my goodness, it's just kind of silly to me. There's a, let's see, yeah, down in here, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see it a little bit too as I read it. But and again, we're talking about just filling up a balloon with some stuff and some gases and some hot air, drifting it up in the air and letting it pop, right? Okay. As a variant, the means for conveying and or the means for delivering of a device according to the invention can be included within the aerostatic means. Now they're talking about the balloon, okay? Such an arrangement in particular makes it possible to decrease the number of elements comprising the device. Number 10, for the seating, okay? That's eliminating that cable and that little device. That's what they're talking about. And in the end, to decrease the production and or installation costs. Moreover, according to another variant, according to a second embodiment of a device, according to the invention described in connection with figures 3b and 3c, the means for delivering and the aerostatic means can consist of one and the same physical entity. You mean you can put stuff inside of the balloon and make it, and make the device, put the device inside the balloon? No way. Like the preceding variant, due to the aerostatic means and the means for delivering being one and the same, such a configuration makes it possible in particular to further decrease the number of elements comprising the device. For seating, to simplify the production and or the installation of said device, and in the end to decrease the production and or installation costs according to the second embodiment described in connection with figure 3b, preferably but in a non-limiting manner, the aerostatic means, or the balloon, and the means for delivering of a device according to the invention can consist of a balloon. According to this particular clever arrangement, the means for conveying at the same time constitute the aerostatic means and comprise the balloon. In fact, the balloon can comprise in its interior the active substance represented in figures 3b, 4a, 4c. You can put stuff inside the balloon? That's just revolutionary. The delivery of the active substance, AS, is then carried out or triggered by the rupture of said balloon. Said rupture being brought about when said balloon substantially reaches a predetermined altitude. It goes on. It gets a little bit better, but I mean, I'm not sure how better you can describe putting active substance inside of a balloon, other than just saying we're going to put some stuff inside a balloon. Figure 3C. In particular, presents a mode of operation of the second embodiment of a device for seating a cloud cell. In this instance, the aerostatic means, or the balloon, the means for conveying and the means for delivering, consists of one and the same entity in the advantageous but non-limiting form of a balloon. It's so advantageous. As specified above, such a balloon can advantageously be filled with a gas that is lighter than air, such as helium, as a non-limiting example. Moreover, said balloon can consist mainly of a resilient compound, possibly a polymer, such as latex or chloroprene, as a non-limiting example. As a variant, or additionally, such a balloon can consist of a biodegradable material, such as, for example, paper. Isn't that what Fugo would be? An old Japanese balloon, right? Moreover, the balloon can advantageously be loaded with active substance, AS, loading not represented in the figures. No, because they just show the figure filled with this active substance. They have to note, though, that the loading is not represented in the figures. And then it's sealed by any suitable closing means. Just tie that sucker off like you would a birthday balloon, right? Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm losing my place here on it. Once the balloon has been loaded with air and an active substance and then sealed, the balloon is released into the atmosphere in order to reach its target, in this case, a cloud cell. Due to the presence of the gas that is lighter than air, the balloon can advantageously rise. They really liked using that word, advantageously rise in the atmosphere as a consequence of buoyancy in a substantially vertical direction, substantially normal with respect to a reference system such as the Earth's surface or the horizon line. Near the base of the atmosphere, the pressure of the air outside the balloon is substantially equal to the pressure of the gas inside the balloon. In addition, the collisions between the molecules comprising the air and the gas outside and the inside of the balloon, respectively, are substantially equal. Wait, hang on a minute. Again, I moved the damn page. respectively are substantially equal, sorry folks, allowing the balloon to remain in a stable configuration. When the balloon rises in the atmosphere and its altitude increases, the presence of air molecules decreases due to a decrease in the pressure. Here, the balloon being sealed, the quantity of gas molecules remains constant within the balloon. The collisions of the gas molecules within the balloon being greater, the balloon continues to inflate. Here, the material constituting the balloon, although advantageously resilient, that is to say capable of recovering its original shape after having been deformed, has an elastic limit. Oh, here's where it gets good, folks. We're reaching the climax here. The elastic limit is defined as the stress. That is to say, all the forces applied to the material constituting the balloon which tend to deform the balloon, starting from which the material constituting the balloon is irreversibly deformed, up to possible rupture of said material. The balloon then undergoes a plastic deformation until a crack is obtained on the surface of a balloon, as represented in Figure 3C. Due to the presence of a strong tension on the surface of the material, said crack, subsequently, when it has reached its limit speed, multiplies into several fractures and propagates over the entire surface of the balloon. Finally, the balloon, more particularly the material composing it, will break into a plurality of pieces and, in the end, enable the delivery of the active substance advantageously within the cloud cell. Thank you very much. Yeah, whoever wrote this, you have a very advantageously and very descriptively and purposefully way of using many words to describe filling a balloon with stuff and popping it. Whoever wrote this, just, round of applause, folks. I don't think you could describe anything else like filling a balloon and then drifting it up in the air and popping it in any better way than they just did in this patent description here. Just so advantageous to even consider putting stuff inside of a balloon and drifting it up. We were really leaping ahead in 2020 with this patent, folks. Good for humanity. Hi, Red. Somebody wants attention. So, anyway, I'll go into more of this hail suppression and the impacts and issues after I play with this puppy for a little bit. Thanks for watching. Please stay tuned. There's definitely more to come, if I can help it.
Calls for us taking the steps now that will make us no longer second in space and in science. It lays the predicate and the foundation for a space communication satellite that will permit the people of the world to see one television program at the same time throughout the world. Think about that kind of communication, and think about the opportunity that will provide. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer, and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world. To control